Welcome to OT Cyber from the plant floor up, a podcast focused on discussing the latest innovations and developments in the OT cybersecurity space. The podcast is powered by DYNICS and hosted by our CTO, Jeff Smith. Subscribe via iTunes, Spotify, or the DYNICS YouTube channel, or wherever you watch/listen to podcasts, and enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of OT Cyber from the plant floor up. We have a really special guest today. He's actually a new team member on the DYNICS team, Chris Gibbs, the Chief Revenue Officer. And we, of course, have our host, Jeff Smith, this Chief Technology Officer at DYNICS. But Jeff, do you want to kick off and introduce Chris and the conversation?
Yeah, Chris comes to DYNICS with a lot of experience. His experience is pretty broad from a Cisco perspective, and I can let him do a little bit more of the introductory and talk about the different places he's been. But he brings a skill set to us. We've kind of grown word of mouth, by reputation, great reputation. Customers talk about us to other customers, and we've worked our way into a lot of different verticals. Obviously automotive is heavy because we're in Michigan, but we kind of worked our way into, water treatment, drainage emissions. We worked our way into aerospace. But there's a lot of areas that we just don't get into. We don't really know how to get into. And that's kind of where Chris comes into the fold, is he brings a lot of experience in how to build the revenue and the sales side of a company into verticals that maybe we haven't had before. So having said that, Chris, I'll let you kind of continue on.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. It is good to be here. When I announced that I was coming to DYNICS, everybody's like, well, why are you making that jump now? And, just my reasoning was pretty clear. When you're a sales guy like I am, Chief Revenue Officer, I come up from the sales ranks, then a individual contributor, a manager, a VP of sales. And the key to sales is you have to have a product that actually does something that you can stand behind because it's effective. At least the key to my sales has always been that. To have a product set that did something, and then a company that you believed in as well. And, when I looked over at DYNICS when we started this discussion, 25 years in the business, great people in your company, great products, great partners, you got a great customer base, and your vision, to protect and have offerings for everything from the plant floor up, such as the name of this podcast. That's just great. And with the customer base you have in automotive and aerospace, I knew this was a perfect place to be, to take it to that next level. Using what I've learned at 15 plus years in cybersecurity, 30 plus years in IT sales. This is just it's the right time to be here.
Awesome. Curious, Chris, and Jeff, feel free to kind of chime in here. But what trends have you kind of seen in the OT and ICS space, particularly with your vast background and how you've been in the cybersecurity and technology space? But of course, there's the subset of the operational technology and ICS.
Now, the challenge. So let's coming from the IT cybersecurity space and moving over to OT. Why did I do that? Because I knew the time was right. There had been a mindset previous that, operational technology networks where air gap were separated. Was no reason for the threat actors to go after them because there was no money, no incentive, no reason to do so. But in the past, 10 plus years, that of course has changed. The technologies that have been developed to protect the operational technology, the industrial control systems, for the most part, been either IT tools reworked, if you will, to operate in an OT environment, or have been tools developed for OT, but with a detection mindset not a protection mindset, which is what DYNICS has. One of the challenges today across both IT and OT is there's not enough resources, not enough time, not enough people, not enough resources, as I said, to tackle the problem with a detection or a noise box system, which creates a lot of alerts that have to be acted upon. The DYNICS solution, which is, only allow what's appropriate in mission traffic and deny the rest, I think is the right mindset for the OT firewall offering that we have. Why even let it on the plant floor? If it's not mission critical, don't even let the traffic in.
In Tanya, having spent almost 25, 30 years on the plant floors, in the plants as an end user in manufacturing, that began with this whole, and I've told a lot of bigger companies this in the past when I was an end user, this whole idea of, monitoring something is what they don't understand is that your typical controls guy or your typical operations or OT guy, he does 100 different things in the course of a week. One day he's touching up points with a robot. The next time he's, tuning VFDs. It's lots of different things. And at the end of the day, their goal is production. And since IT is a service to manufacturing, it's not something that they're going to focus on. So, if I get an email or an alert on my phone and I'm in the middle of a downtime situation, I'm not going to run along and check why we see Modbus TCP on a network we've never seen it before. So, if a threat actor gets a lot of time on a network while I'm off doing the stuff I need to do to keep the plant running, then the detection is kind of pointless, because if I get 8 hours to play around, I don't need, it's kind of pointless. And I think the other thing is that if you're going to go with a detection only, assume that you're going to have to beef up your staff. So it's not only going to be the cost of the solution, you're going to have people who can respond to that, which means you're going to have to bring IT people down and have them start handling or dealing with it. Or you're going to have to bring in people at the operational technology level that A, understand it, and B, know how to respond to it, and aren't going to be out starting up something on the plant floor or fixing a problem, and have the time and to be timeliness, or to have timely answer to the problem. So, prevention is really it. It's, enterprise networks, they have to let everything except that which they know or suspect to be bad. And on I've said this 1,000 times, and on the IT side, the OT side is you don't let anything in except that which you expressly know to be good. And that's a fundamental difference in you approach those solutions. So, I think that's, it's not only how much does the solution cost me, it's not only does it actually stop things, or does it prevent issues, is what's it going to cost me from a manpower perspective and purely a management perspective. So when you get companies, the size of some of these huge automakers, or the huge, food and bev companies or pharma companies, they anticipate spending a couple of % more than the average company on this type of stuff as a percentage of their, revenue or profit. In the automotives in particular, if you look at the tier suppliers, that's not part of their budget. That's not a part of their, they don't anticipate paying a bunch of extra money to bring staffing to be able to support this stuff, to be around just in case something happens. So, going back to what Chris said a little while ago, if I don't let it out on the network, I probably don't have to deal with it. So, monitoring without, control or the ability to stop is only half a solution. And unfortunately, it's the half of the solution that lets the badness into your system. So, you're going to be answering for it one day.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting, we're discussing the plant floor and manufacturing and all. Threat actors, we think of them as a guy with a hoodie who gets into your network and does whatever he wants, ransomware, exploit, data exfiltration. But it's actually not the case. It's a production line, just like in manufacturing, production line. Threat actors, there is a series of groups, people, organizations that each do a certain thing. Two of the bigger frameworks for the process, for the production line that a threat actor groups have to go through. One is the Lockheed Martin kill chain, The other, a little bit newer, the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So in the kill chain, it's a 7-step process. It starts with recon and then brute forcing and then gaining presence in a network and then doing more recon on that network and in creating sustainability, living off the land, if you will, and then reaching out and checking everything else. Well, if you have a tools that can prevent with these threat actors, they're doing this on the, the IT network. They're establishing base camp and then trying to see what they can access and exploit. And then they're selling that access. They're selling that capability. They're selling that presence. And then others are coming in with the exploits and they're dropping them in. And so it's a production line. There's money involved. There's ransomware involved. It's all part of the food chain. Well, if you can protect not allow what shouldn't be traversing, and then B, control which assets can talk to which other assets, you've reduced the attack surface that threat actor groups can go after, and that's part of the DYNICS solution. So it's beautiful, the protection and control and visibility options that we have.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I love the use of beautiful right there. Would you mind also telling us a little bit about your new role at DYNICS and your vision and kind of what your superpower also is?
Superpower. So my vision for DYNICS is that the offering is every OT-ICS network should have DYNICS in that network. I mean, let's just go for that is the goal, that everybody, they know us, they want to use us, we're providing protection, and we're protecting those customers so that they can continue their operations. And that's the key here, right? In the IT world, hey, can't get to a printer. Something bad happened. All right, well, let's fix it. But here, we've got a production line. We've got a company. We've got, those things have to keep going to keep the revenue generating and the power and the water and all of that flowing, which is necessary for all of us, right? So that's my goal, is that we are in front of as many as I can get, as many end users, and helping them protect their operations to deliver their value to their customers. The great thing about DYNICS so far is that they've been very, as Jeff mentioned earlier, their selling has been in the community that they know, and they have absolutely done very well, very successful in that community. Mine's to get out and expose DYNICS to people who haven't heard from us before. So you can bring in some tools, some business intelligence and CRM tools that will help us identify and target and prospect. We're getting the word out, what you're doing here. We're going to leverage that, what you've been doing for the last year. Just continue that, more marketing, get the presence, and get the result.
Awesome. And this is a question for both Jeff and Chris, and we talk about this on multiple episodes in our podcast. But where do you see the OT-ICS space heading in the next 10 to 15 years?
Where do I see it heading? Well, it's not going away. It's one thing in the IT world when everything moves to the cloud. Well, how do you move a manufacturing plant, critical infrastructure, to the cloud? No, it's moving to a place that more and more people are going to be more and more dependent upon whatever the output of that plant is. And it has also become, because the threat actors know that stopping that production, Colonial Pipeline, et cetera, that there's money to be made, it will be more and more of a target. So my mission is to reduce the attack surface, reduce the potential for a threat actor to be successful on our customers' networks.
Yeah, I think there's people that talk, trending towards the cloud and controls and virtualizing PLCs, and it's all well and good, but if it ever happens, which I have my doubts, there are certain parts of it that could certainly move that way. Um, However, it's going to hugely change the skill set requirements out on the plant floor. Because your average controls guys these days are kind of younger than they were, so that it's kind of been some of the older guys are retired and some of the newer guys are in, and they get the idea of IP addresses and all this stuff because they play around with their home router and their Wi-Fi at home. So they certainly have more of a skill set or more of a open mind towards that stuff. But when you start trying to push systems into the cloud, you fundamentally get away from what they know and what they're good at. And it's going to be a whole different skill set of person. And the question is, are you going to have the guy who can go out and touch up points on a robot and go out and program a PLC? At the same time, be the same guy who understands how this cloud stuff works and how it's running from the cloud and how this works and how that works. So the cost of doing business in just manpower, knowledge, and training alone is going to be through the roof. I don't think anybody really gives that much consideration. And then it's purely the safety aspect of it. In the manufacturing site, when we're manufacturing, I used to tell my engineers, I said, number one, whatever it is you're doing has to work. Number two, it has to be safe. And number three, it has to be efficient. And so you can't ever confuse efficiency with safety. And obviously it has to work. If your solution doesn't work, then it's pointless to begin with. But the second most important piece is the safety side of it. And then it's efficiency, right? And too often, as people talk about these cloud solutions and this and that, it's how do we save a buck in this cost and that cost, and not really get a lot of consideration, I don't think. At least I don't hear about it in the conversations I listen to, relative to what that kind of move does for safety. And if you have a hardwired safety circuit, but your PLC is in the cloud, and you happen to lose communications, and I get that, we're 99.99999% connected, great. But at 1.9% where you lose communications with something for 30 seconds, unless that system is really done right and it really has all the right safeguards in place, 10 seconds on a plant floor is enough to seriously damage people and equipment. So I just think that trend that we're being pushed towards from people who don't really get to plant floor is I think it's going to come full circle at some point, and they're going to realize that it's just not as feasible as they would hope it would be. Right. And I think the driving factors, and we were having this conversation yesterday, Rob Grove, with our VP of sales, and Ed and I were talking a little bit about it yesterday, is, that everybody's pushing for a software, a SaaS model, which is all well and good, but it can't push you into doing things that don't make sense from a manufacturing perspective and on a plant floor. And that's exactly what I see happening. And it's just going to make the whole cyber scene much more complicated. I tell people that you can't really make a centrifuge run away if you've got a $400 hardware safety circuit on there that says, if you hit this speed, stop. If you hit this temperature, shut down. Because you can't write malware or bugs or code that makes that fail. It's a hardware safety circuit. And I used to talk about this as it's kind of the cockpit door that the controls guys have that the enterprise or the IT guys don't have. Right? We do have hardware safety circuits, and too many people ignore that today with this push towards, and I'm kind of on my soapbox here a little bit, but this push towards, let's move everything to the cloud, let's move everything to software. It's exponentially more difficult to bypass or defeat something like hardwired speed sensors, temperature sensors, things of that nature, than it is to interject, your code or your data in between an HMI and a PLC. It just makes it a lot easier. I used to do a talk about, cybersecurity and controls, and I would ask a question in a room full of, 200 guys that were plant guys. And my question was, how many of you have reviewed your electrical drawings for the line with cybersecurity in mind? How many of you actually gone through how you physically build a panel up, what your standard panels look like, how you place machines on the floor, how your flow of product is, software aside? physically and mechanically and electrically, have you reviewed those systems with an eye towards cybersecurity? And inevitably, the answer is no. And to this day, I'm sure it's still no. People just don't think about it. And we have a lot of wherewithal there that enterprise and cloud cybersecurity doesn't have. And unfortunately, there just isn't a lot of people that understand that, because most of those people haven't lived on the plant floor like I have and like DYNICS has, right? We got our start, 27, 25 odd years ago, and we've been in the plant floor ever since, and my vision, or our vision, is, to build a comprehensive ecosystem of products that solve problems for people, real problems, right? Problems that we lived and had. And that's why we continue to grow, even though we haven't been, up until the last year or so, very savvy in terms of marketing, or trying to push into other verticals with bringing on talent like Chris, or talent like our most outstanding marketing person, Jen. So we're trying to go that way, but at the end of the day, we're going to keep on doing what we do, which is solve problems on the plant floor, and do it in such a way that engenders loyalty and customers that keep coming back to us and keep talking to us about, or keep talking to other people about what we do and how we do it. That's my 2 cents.
Well said. Well, way to close it out, Jeff. I love it. Chris, anything else to leave the audience with before we wrap up this episode?
No. Yes, I do have. So say it's what Jeff just said there. What brought me to DYNICS? It's their experience, his experience, what he built, and why it is valuable and useful, and with the customer base that we have, and how they are using the entire product suite. There's something here that will help you protect your plant floor, whoever you are, whatever industry and vertical you're in operations and manufacturing. And it was designed from a guy who thinks like you do. That's the key. It was designed from the plant floor up.
I love that ending. Well, I'm going to leave it on that note, but thank you so much for joining us again. And I'm sure you'll see more of Chris. You'll always see more of Jeff. And we will catch you on the next episode of OT Cyber, from the plant floor up. Thank you.